So I think it's pretty easy to see why you would want to create a single page web app as opposed to a traditional round trip application. And probably the biggest reason is that the user experience becomes a lot nicer when you don't have to constantly be refreshing the page to receive new data, or be needing to do a full page refresh when you want to navigate to somewhere else in the application. And so all of these features are pretty cool, but they come at a cost to the developer. And the cost is that it can be pretty tricky to implement all the pieces that a single page app needs to work. And so that's where frameworks like AngularJS come in. And of course, Angular is not the only framework that helps with building single-page web applications. We also have frameworks like React or Ember or Vue.js. But Angular's been around for quite a while, and so it's had a chance to mature and have a lot of features that are very nice for building single-page apps. So what exactly do we need in a framework in terms of features? Well, at the end of the last video, we talked about how one of the bigger pieces is the ability to send requests to the server without refreshing the page. And again, this is done with XHR requests, which are HTTP requests that take place behind the scenes without any kind of page refresh. Now, if you were to try to do this with plain old JavaScript on your own, it would actually be pretty tough. XHR requests take a lot of JavaScript code if you're doing them manually. And then when you toss in all sorts of browser inconsistencies, you might as well be writing your own library for handling HTTP requests. So AngularJS gives us an abstraction for this. The next thing that a framework should provide is a way to manipulate the document object model, or the DOM. And if you've spent any time working with a DOM, which is the tree of objects that makes up the structure of a web page, you know that it can be a little bit tricky with plain JavaScript. And so you might have used something like jQuery to help you manipulate the DOM. And in fact, Angular actually makes use of a version of jQuery, a small subset of it called JQLite. And so this is used when you want to do something like listen for a user event, like a button click, and then maybe conditionally hide or show something on the page. And last of the big three is that single-page apps need a way to manage their state and their routing. And so what do I mean by this? Well, if we think about it, when we make a single-page app, we could get away with just going to a single URL in the browser and downloading all of the HTML and CSS and JavaScript, all of the assets that we need, and then just operating from that single URL. If we went to a different area of the application, it wouldn't be like we're clicking on a link to another page. We think back to our traditional websites, and each page that we go to has its own specific URL in the URL bar. But this isn't true of single-page apps in general. In general, you would just land on the starting point for the application, and then you could navigate from there within the app, and nothing would change in the URL bar. And so this causes problems, obviously, because if we ever wanted to send a link to somebody so that they can get to a part of the application that isn't just the entry point, well, we wouldn't have a way to do it. All they would see is the first view of the application when you go to the main page. And thinking back to the Gmail example, if we go over here to the starred category, you see that the route here within the URL bar changes. So we could take this URL right here as is and paste it in another tab, and we get right to that starred section of Gmail. And so Gmail implements routing, and that's ultimately what we're looking for in our single-page apps as well. We want a way to be able to send links around and to be able to get to somewhere within the application that isn't just the starting point. And so if you've got experience with jQuery, you probably know that a lot of what we're trying to go for here is available within the library. You can send HTTP requests with jQuery. You can manipulate the DOM. That's what it's known best for. And if you use maybe a mix of jQuery and some plain JavaScript, you could implement something like routing as well. The problem, though, is that that actually takes a lot of code. Even though jQuery makes working with JavaScript a lot easier, it still takes a lot of code to put in all the features that are necessary for a single-page application. And so again, Angular provides the tools that make this a lot easier for us.